Are we rolling? Yes, sir. All
Okay,
right.
here we go. Let's get her started.
I heard this the other day because we were talking about this, Shamar and I, just like either we do the intro or not. And so I heard this from Tucker Carlson. I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he goes, "You know what an Irish exit is?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." So it's kind of like when you bounce from the party and you don't say bye to anyone. And I love doing Irish exits.
Yeah.
Everyone does.
I mean,
you just
easier.
leave. And so he's like, "We call this an Irish entrance." Oh. So it's like without knowing that we're recording, I do Irish entrances.
And you just get started and we get the ball rolling. I like that.
It's like Joe Rogan and all those guys.
Yeah.
It's kind of instead of just hey, welcome to the Freemium podcast. Makes it a little easier, a little more organic. But thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, first podcast. You look nice and loose.
Yes,
you look like $1 million too.
Thank you.
Where'd you get the suit?
This one I had made, actually. This one was for my wedding.
Can I see the inside?
Yeah, you know what? This was actually the wrong interior.
Okay.
I had got it the day before my wedding. I was like, he shows up. Wrong lining.
No.
Day before my wedding.
So it's too late to change.
Freaked out. Yeah, but you know that when you're getting married, there's always something that comes up, especially the week before, and you just got to roll with it.
Yeah.
You go, you know what? Put it on. At least the outside looks good, and then rolled with it. So,
yeah. I mean, it's a funky lining.
Yeah, it's definitely funky. The original one I had was like a green, like kind of cool, not too like a little more subtle. This one, I mean. What do we got? But you know what? I take it, roll with it, and
when did you get married?
I got married 2 years ago.
Okay, how's married life?
It's good. You know,
the same
I'm married. Like you know how it is. It's ups and downs. We had lived together for a few years before we got married, anyways. So marriage life. I mean, you go from one day to the next. Not much changes. I think the real big change, like after everything, is once I think kids come along. I don't have kids, but I've just seen it with the friends, and I think that's the real game changer and really what's going to test you and test, you know, your wife or your significant other moving forward. Because I mean, you got to care for
a toddler,
a being, you know, who's going to be dying if you don't take care of them. Essentially,
well,
like it gets to that.
Not essentially. So, if you don't take care of your baby will die.
So. But you know, marriage life's good. It's like any relationship. You know, you gotta foster it. You gotta work at it. There's always the ups and downs, and that's it. You know.
Yeah. The grass is always greener on the other side, and sometimes people, you know, like having a relationship. It's it's not easy. You got to work at it, just like anything else. You got to work on yourself, work on your business, work on your relationships. But I feel like if you put the effort in, you will most likely be rewarded most of the time. It's a shame that so many people get divorced, though.
You see it a lot. I mean, we're still at that point.
Do you guys touch any divorce law?
Well, it's funny. That's how it started.
I
mean, that's how I initially wanted to go into family law. That was my whole.
Really?
Yeah, like how we went back. Like so started. I initially was in psychology. I was in psychology at Concordia. Okay. I wanted to be like a marriage counselor, sex therapist kind of thing. My whole goal, my life was like I wanted to have my office, you know, the couches, sit back. And help people. Honestly, that was my life goal. And then I had started kind of the master's process.
Okay.
And didn't realize how much like lab work there was involved in terms of writing a thesis, your master's thesis, and the redundancy of it and the data and going through that. So I was like, I don't know about this. And as you know, my dad's a lawyer, so he had his own firm. And I had noticed that there was this program that you could be a accredited family mediator. If you had a psychology degree, you were able to fast track it by almost a year because you were able to forego about like 60 hours of courses. So that was my goal when I went to law school, was go to law school, you know, do my bar, and then eventually become a accredited family mediator. But started my stash in family law and have not gone back since.
Did you not like it?
You know what? You're dealing with so much just vitriol, if you will, just the contentiousness.
That's a big word.
Yeah, I mean, just the contentiousness of the two sides, right? Especially when we're talking about a custody battle, right? You're talking about someone's most prized possession, their children, right? So it's a tough, it makes it very difficult on the lawyer sometimes because you're not that you're not dealing with reasonable people, but it's hard for people to think very reasonably because all they want to do, you know, is obviously they want to make sure that they have access to their child. But a lot of the times you see them, it's just they want to F over their, you know, significant other because of, you know, let's say the other party had an affair or what have you. So sometimes they'll make decisions that aren't in the best interest of the child. It's more, let me get back to against my ex, you know, and use the child as a pawn. And for that, I was like, yeah, that's not for me. That's not.
And so you experienced this yourself? Like, did you actually have, like, were you practicing family law?
Yeah, so I was doing like my stage under a family lawyer for a little bit.
And you were starting to see all this stuff, how nasty it could get and everything.
Exactly.
Whereas versus in corporate law, which is kind of what you specialize in now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, so you're a lawyer at KBD. So I feel like people it's a lot easier to think clearly because it's just business to business. It's like there's no children involved.
Yeah. I mean, for some people, I mean, their business is like their child, right? Like, especially people who started their own company and it's very important to them. But in corporate, especially like, let's say with respect to mergers, acquisitions, even when you're dealing with the opposing, like not opposing counsel, but the lawyers, let's say for the vendor or for the purchaser, you're both trying to get to the same goal, right? One client's trying to sell, another one's trying to buy. All you're trying to do is make sure that your client's protected and their interests are protected on both sides. You know, so you're headed towards the same goal. Whereas in litigation, and I still do a bit of litigation for my construction clients. Okay.
Litigation, can you, just for the viewers, can you explain what litigation is?
So
it's like, just to my understanding, it's just basically like, hey, someone didn't pay me, someone did this, someone did that as a business, and I want to sue them. That's litigation, right?
Yeah, that is litigation. So litigation, I mean, we're governed by the Civil Code of Quebec in Quebec. And it goes from, we have, you know, obviously that what you're describing, like a collections matter, you know, it's a contractual obligation. I provided you a service. You need to pay me for that service. If you didn't pay me for that service, what are my recourses? I'm going to sue you. That's essentially litigation. But then it comes out to, you know, if there's extra contractual obligation. So let's say, you know, you're at La Ronde and you fall off the roller coaster or what have you, you know, like stuff like that. That's also litigation. So anywhere where you're technically, you know, in court. But then there's obviously, like, I know you've had like Mike Coury and stuff on the show. Like, you're talking about criminal. That's
we have a group chat with all our buddies, and so it was his birthday the other day, and then we're like. Everyone goes, happy birthday, you fucking communist. Because like everyone kind of sides with me. And like, look, he makes good arguments on his side as well. Yeah. But he's definitely more to the left than I am myself. And then someone's like, what are you going to do for your birthday? And I had to type this. So I wrote in the text, he's going to read the Communist Manifesto for the fourth time.
Oh man.
Yeah. So he's like,
I mean, but it's good though. It's good to also have friends of, like, you know what I mean, of different opinions and different types of it.
It's good. It's just the main point, like, he does bring up a lot of good points, but where he lost me or where he loses me is like the housing crisis we have right now in Canada and a lot of other places around the world. It's absolutely ridiculous. And his argument was, I'm like, okay, well, why not just drop the red tape? Why not just like make the permitting process a little bit less expensive and incentivize developers to actually build? Like, you have to incentivize the private sector to build. Why not just like slow down immigration a little bit? I'm not saying stop immigration. I love immigrants. We need them. But when you bring in so many and our system can't handle it right now, which is pretty obvious, like just regular things like this. And where he lost me in that particular podcast was, well, you know what? If the housing isn't affordable, then basically it's the developers that should be dropping their margins. So he's like, and he goes, the government should force them to build. So it's like, so well, yeah, it's like, that's time out, bro, time out. So you're telling me that you want the government to force the developers to build housing units at a loss?
Yeah.
Like,
you can't force someone,
bro, we don't live in China.
Exactly. We're all trying to make a living. Even these developers need to make a living. We're not doing this out of our goodwill.
Correct. And if you actually look at like the amount of today, it wasn't like this 25 years ago, but today, you know who makes the most money on a housing unit, or like, let's say an apartment or a condo unit? The government. Yeah, they make the most amount of money.
The permitting,
the required, the development taxes. It's just tax and tax
property
and tax.
Taxes. Like during that COVID boom, the rush, the amount of money the governments, the municipalities made on property taxes, especially if the houses were being sold 100,000, 200,000 over asking. Like me and my wife went through it.
Yes,
I think we put 12 offers before we ended up getting ours. And I'm telling you, like you're seeing it. We're putting in 100 over asking, and we're getting outbid by 60, 70 grand.
Yeah, there's definitely it was like a euphoria.
Don't get me wrong. Look, the interest rates at the time were at historic lows, right? So I think that's how people were justifying it. We were able to eventually get ours basically around asking, but we didn't get those 1%, 1.5% interest rates.
That's why I rent my house. So I own my condo. I bought it pre-COVID. I bought my condo originally in Point St. Charles in 2016, I want to say.
Okay.
Sold it last year, 2022. Made a bit of money, but not nearly as much as you think. After you factor in, you got to pay out the property tax every single year. Yep. You have to pay out the real estate broker. You have to pay this. You have to pay that. You have the condo fees. You have the. So everyone's like, oh wow, because I bought it at 405, sold it at 5. I was like, you made $95,000.
No,
nah, man.
No,
not even close.
No,
not even close. So.
Yeah. And at least, look, you got it out before this whole, as you saw, this whole new capital gains tax that came in, and
dude, okay, I want to talk, dude. Let's
get into it.
Yeah, like we're all over the place, and I love this right now. So this is the nice thing about a podcast. So I said this, and we're never gonna know for sure. When they came out with the capital gains tax, the increase in the capital gains gains tax from 50 to 66%.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the last straw. I won't be surprised if CBC and the legacy media in Canada starts throwing Trudeau under the bus. And it's literally since that happened, they lost the by-election in some area in Toronto.
Yeah, suburb of Toronto.
Yeah, that's a week or 2 weeks ago.
And that was like it was a liberal stronghold.
That was 31 years it was liberal.
Yeah, so Conservatives didn't even think that they were going to...
Yeah. I'm convinced that capital gains increase was the last straw. I think the banks, the insurance companies, the people who really run the country made a call and said, he's done. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
Because it's literally since that, he was already on the decline. Since that happened, it's been way worse. I don't know if people notice this, but it's literally since the capital gains tax increase came out.
Oh, yeah.
They've been throwing him under the fucking bus. And even the media, CTV, CBC, if CBC is hammering Trudeau, you know it's done.
It's a federally covered media source, subsidized by us, by our tax dollars. Honestly, the big thing with Trudeau right now is that people just have such a hatred towards him.
Yep.
People don't want him running the country anymore. Mm-hmm. And look, that happens after he's at 10 years, 10
or 11,
11 years, so, and people just can't handle him anymore because he doesn't come out and ever say what's what. Mm-hmm. The way I get vexed just watching him speak.
I can't watch him.
And with the and the does.
Christopher Freeland either. Them two, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I can't watch them. And I get angry.
When they're trying to say that this new tax is not going to affect the average. We're talking about people who created their businesses that, started like a small shop, let's say, when they were 20s. And now they're in their 60s, 70s. It's been their same, business for all of these years. They want to kind of capitalize. This is what they want to sell it for.
It's their retirement.
Their retirement. Yeah. But now, call it 16% more is going to be taxable rather than what it used to be. You know what I mean? I understand, yes, there's still the incentives. There's still the capital gains. What's it called? In order to... sorry, I'm... the word, but you know what I mean, where you're able to get the savings on the capital gains. I think it's at we're talking at 1.2
capital gains exemption.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So the capital gains exemptions that I think it's about 1.2 million now. But we're talking about what if okay, you sell it at 2 million now.
Yes.
You're still there's a huge.
But it's you're absolutely right. And the part that a lot of people don't understand, because it is true that this doesn't apply to a lot of people if you don't own stocks, if you don't own a business. And so I can understand their point of view going, well, this doesn't affect me because I am never going to have a capital gains. I get paid on income. Therefore, like, this doesn't apply to me. Yeah, tax the rich. I can understand where they're coming from, but they're blowing smoke. The government is blowing smoke up their ass. Why? Because if that's not how it works. Capital will go to wherever it can make the most amount of money.
Yep.
So if we have, and it's not just Canadians that, produce things and services and stuff, there's foreign investment that comes into the country. If you're an outside investor going, would I rather go and take my business or take my money and invest it in Canada Or would I rather go invest it in a place like the United States or a place like Southeast Asia or wherever it is? If you can make 10% in the US, example, and you're only going to make 5% in Canada because there's taxes, there's regulation, there's more red tape, there's this and that, you're going to go to the US.
Of course.
10 times out of 10. And so the point, and I had one of my buddies, Bill Mitchell, so he's an investment guy. He's been in the stock market. He was a day trader for years and years and years. And he put it really well, really eloquently. And he's basically said that we were speculating, and I heard through the grapevine, one of my finance buddies said, apparently he's going to increase the capital gains tax. So I asked Bill that question. This was before it actually passed.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to pass. I go, what happens if this capital gains tax actually does increase? He goes, well, he starts laughing. He's like, that's just more capital flight out of Canada.
Yep.
At a time where we have this serious productivity issue in the country, we've depegged from the U.S. So basically, like we used to be, we're neck and neck with productivity with the U.S. We've dropped off a cliff. And you guys want to come in and tax business owners even more, and we're already one of the highest tax places in the world.
Yep. De-incentivizes
what are you
people
doing?
To invest.
No, but it's stupid. It's fucking stupid. You can only tax a population so much until eventually they go, fuck off, man, I'm out of here.
It's just because not only are they raising the capital gains taxes, especially in Quebec, we're the highest taxed province territory in North America.
It's nuts.
And you're adding this on top of us.
Yeah.
Already a 50%, of our income, hard-earned income,
yeah,
goes to the government. They're using this money as they please. Obviously, look, a lot goes to Medicare, and there's certain things that
we're not
super
saying
happy
that
about.
there shouldn't be tax. That's not what we're saying.
Guaranteed, they're obviously, we want to live in a society that functions properly. Mm-hmm. Yes, you need the taxes, but what I see it and what gets me frustrated is, for example, my firm, we represent, we have certain clients going against certain of the Quebec bills. Okay, some against basically the English language laws, right? Bill 96, all of these laws that are trying to force French down our throats. And I understand, yes, there needs to be a protection of the French language, but not to the point where English Quebecers feel like outsiders now. And you'll see it every time there's some kind of motion or any type of application in the court. They're going to appeal it. They're going to appeal it. They're going to appeal it all the way to the Supreme Court. Every single time when we're talking about the constitutionality,
your clients will.
No, the Quebec government will. And who pays the prosecutors, right?
The taxpayers.
The taxpayers.
Yeah.
So it's just that's sometimes where I get frustrated about it is that you see your checks, you see you get paid your income, the money going towards taxes, and that's fine. But to see where those tax dollars go sometimes, that whose interests are these benefiting? You know what I mean? Especially Legault, this small niche of his core. That's what frustrates me the most sometimes is where we pay so much and sometimes you just don't see it really coming back. And then that's what hurts. And I see a lot of people already, we all know, you know what I mean? The cost of living right now is hard.
It's crazy,
we're paying using our after-tax dollars, and then you go to the grocery store. Obviously, certain groceries, there's no tax on the groceries, but anything else you're trying to buy, sales tax. So we're paying taxes again with our after-tax dollars.
I pay tax on tax for if you're a business renting out a space. So we pay tax on this year, and then they charge a tax on top of the tax.
Yeah, I mean it's wild, but that's the society we've become, and that's why so many people look to go towards other places, you know what I mean? Or set up corporations or why do you think I know we're going off topic here, but like the Panama Papers and why offshore accounts or people put their money in tax havens? Because people want to keep more of their hard-earned money in their own pockets.
Yes.
And that's a huge issue.
And this is like where I think a lot of legacy media, they'll spin it as, sorry, let me back up a little bit. There is a widening gap between the rich and the poor, for sure, and that's a very complicated question on how to fix it. I don't think it's just tax more, but also, too, I can understand the other side, and I've mentioned this before in other podcasts, especially students. So let's say most people today in Canada, at least not anytime soon, they'll never be able to afford a house. So we're supposed to be living in a capitalist society. Or let's even take the U.S., which is more capitalist than Canada. So you got someone who's growing up, they're never going to own a house. They work hard. They're barely scraping by. And so capitalism isn't working for them. So I can understand where they're coming from when they go, well, this isn't working for me. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm working 60 hours a week. No, I don't want capitalism. I want the government to help me out. So I can kind of understand that. How do we fix this? That's the can of worms, which we won't get into today.
Yeah, that's a huge question. I mean,
and you're going to ask 10 people and get 10 different answers on how to fix it.
You know?
But yeah, so it's like, and also too, just back to Quebec, I can understand where they're coming from with regards to protecting their culture. And there is a lot of laws that they've passed that definitely do help protect the language. And if they didn't pass these laws, if they just let everything run as it was back in the 1950s, I don't think there'd be much French anymore. I honestly don't think so.
No,
Montreal would be Toronto.
I agree.
And I remember I used to date a girl. She was francophone, like super francophone. Like her family, most of them didn't really speak English. Like francophone, en région.
Okay.
And they had money. They had a lot of money. And I asked the mother that because I just want to understand their logic.
Yeah, of course.
And she said, I don't care. She goes, I agree with you that economically speaking, when René Lévesque came in and passed all these laws and all the banks went to Toronto and a bunch of other businesses went to Toronto, she's like, yeah, I know that that's not good for the economy, but I get to keep my culture. And she's like, our culture was going. And she's right. So I understand where they're coming from. As an angle, like I actually side with them a lot. And like there's other things too where I think in Canada today, what does it mean to be Canadian? And I think that's a question a lot of people can't answer. And I think a Québécois, what I appreciate about them is if they say, what does it mean to be Québécois? They'll fucking tell you what it means to be Québécois. I feel like they're more patriotic about being Québécois than most other Canadians are.
I agree. And I think it is important to ensure protection of the culture. I think there's just certain provisions and certain ways that they went about it that I just don't agree with.
I agree with you there.
Like the language police. Some things, it's like you're finding, small businesses because, there's a mistake on their menu or those are the kind of acts that they've or provisions that they've added that I don't necessarily agree with. The amount of powers that call it the language police were provided with these new amendments. I mean, they could essentially come in. Look, I'm very summary, but come into your office if they have reason to believe that you haven't been doing our francisation of your corporation, that there's not enough French that's been that's the language of communication, if you will, for offices under, I think, what are we at? I think it's
between
50,
25 and 49.
Exactly.
So sorry, if it's over 25, excuse me.
Technically, if they want to do an investigation, they could come in and seize your documents, your computers, your what have you, to ensure that you're abiding by the law. There was a big thing with the barreau, right? Because they can't come, if they were to do that in a lawyer's office, a lot of our documentation is all covered by client solicitor privilege, right? It's all confidential information. So you'd be in breach of people's rights to this privilege because they could come in and technically under their powers to check whether or not our internal communications are in French or not. So things like that. But I think the overarching goal is I agree with you on that. Yes, there is a requirement. Let's protect the French culture. Certain provisions, I think they went too far on it. That's kind of my stance.
I'll agree with you there. And I just always come back to whether it's the Quebec government, the Canadian government, any government at that point, leave me alone. I'm running my business. I pay my taxes. I pay a lot of taxes. I employ people. We're a legit business. We're not money laundering. Like, especially for us, we're under regulated. Like I'm under the AMF.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm an insurance broker. It's a highly regulated industry. I can't cheat. If I cheat, I will get caught and they will take my business away from me. Like it's impossible to cheat. Same thing for you with the barreau, I would imagine.
Very
so it's like we already have all this regulation. We already have to make sure that, we got to toe the line, make sure we're not doing anything illegal. Why come in and basically say, well, what's your internal correspondence?
Yeah.
That I agree is not a little. That's overkill. And I don't want to get in trouble, so we'll go to the next topic.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that one we could go off for days, but
so here we'll start from here. So like give us like the Cole's notes of like how/why you kind of we talked about a little bit earlier. How/why did you get started in law? So you mentioned you want to be a psychologist.
So exactly. There was a psychologist, and so the whole goal was the family law avenue, if you will. Saw that, didn't enjoy it at all. I mean, look, obviously, also my dad, Consolado Gattuso, had his own firm, which was at the time was Mitchell Gattuso. So he had opened that in 91. So when I was born in 90. So yeah, the year after I was born, he opened it with this guy, Brian Mitchell. They had done that for almost 20 years. And then now it's called Gattuso Bouchard Mazzone. So with the two other partners. But for me, it was really, I got into it because I wanted to do that family law. I knew I had the avenue of, working with my dad's firm. When I was in law school, I was able to work there during the summers. I was working there one day a week during the school year. And I really got to see what it was like to work in a law firm, which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed it. So
what do you enjoy about it?
It's meeting people, learning about new industries, creating new relationships. I think that's my favorite part for sure is even with you, you know what I mean? We had gone to high school together and now here we go. We're back at it and it's great. And now I'm on your podcast but you mean
it's good. Yeah.
It's creating these new relationships and then obviously helping people as much as you can, help people get out of either, get out of a certain problem or, help them increase their business or expand their business or grow, whatever enterprise they have and being there to help them along the way. That's a lot of my clients, when I had started, were young like me, you know what I mean? We were in our 20s, we were starting something new. And so a lot of my clients, I've been with them all along the way, and helping them grow and that I enjoy a lot.
It's what they say when you're running a business, you need I like to say 3 good people, outside of your actual organization. You need a really good accountant, you need a really good lawyer, and I like to say you also need a really good insurance broker.
Yeah, I agree.
Insurance,
you do.
It's not as important as the law and the accounting. I say that kind of as a joke, half joke, but no, having a good lawyer is very, very, very important. We can touch on that a little bit later, but is there anything else you'd like to add to kind of the story? So you've been at it for what now? 12 years, 10 years?
No. So I went to law school. I started when I was 24.
Okay.
And then now I'm in my 5th year of law, but cause I'd done law school, then the bar, but I actually failed the bar the first time around. It was tough. Had to redo it. And then, so what I ended up doing when there was a little break between when I had to do the bar and redo the bar is I got my license to be a trademark agent. So I do some trademark work too, which I find fun.
Oh, like trademarking?
So trademarking your brand name, your logo, having a trademark so it's protected across Canada so that someone can't use your name in association with the services or the good that you're providing so that people can't, infringe on your mark. So let's say KBD Insurance. Technically, it's not a trademarkable name, but just for an example, if you were to have it trademarked in Canada, someone else, let's say in Ontario, wouldn't be able to now open a company under the name KBD Insurance and sell insurance.
Have you ever seen examples where another bigger company would come in, go, I really like that name, and they discover that the name that is already in existence is not trademarked? They create a company with the same name, same industry, and then they trademark it first, and technically they'd be able to steal that other company's name?
Technically, but so how it works is that, when you trademark it, it gives you that right because it's a published, registered mark. So no one could claim ignorance of that mark. So let's say there is a trademark name. You can't then open a company, someone sues you for infringement to say, oh, well, I didn't know because it's been registered. The company that didn't register, they have what's called a common law right to the name. So in that case, it's harder to prove in court. So let's say they want to go after someone else who's using their name. You have to prove that this name that you're using has essentially what we call accrued secondary meaning in the market, so that when people hear your name, they associate the services that you're doing. So let's say something big like Coca-Cola. People hear Coca-Cola.
I was thinking about the same thing. Why are we thinking
massive?
Jeez.
But something like Coca-Cola, right? People hear Coca-Cola, they know, okay, it's the drink.
Yeah.
And so that's what that kind of secondary meaning is that there's a term and people associate that term with the good or service that's provided.
Is that what goodwill is technically?
No, goodwill is more with respect to even your customers. So your trademark, because trademark is an asset. When let's say you sell your company, you're selling your assets, you sell the trademark as well. So that's what
so
people
Coca-Cola, if they were to sell, would be just the name would be worth. I'm sure a couple billion.
Billions of dollars, of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just the name.
Yeah. So goodwill kind of encompasses, yes, obviously the name, but also just what you think about it. Goodwill, your relationships with your clients, your client lists, like how your reputation, let's say, in the society, even though it's something, it's an asset that you sell.
It's like your brand.
Yeah, it's your brand.
How strong is your brand?
Yeah, exactly.
So bigger companies, when they go to sell, because correct me if I'm wrong. So on the goodwill part, because there's a goodwill number for
exactly,
on accounting reports and stuff.
Exactly.
So that's kind of, I'm sure it's kind of a number that they pull out of their ass. But if you have like a big company, let's say it's a company across Canada. Let's take Desjardins Insurance.
Yeah.
Or Desjardins. So the goodwill on that would just be like, okay, what's the value of the brand of Desjardins?
Yeah.
That's what goodwill is.
Exactly. You're encompassing the brand. Exactly.
A couple $1 billion as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Huh. Okay, I want to move on to the next topic. This is one I've really been looking forward to. Small companies and big companies. And so I've never personally experienced this, but I've seen other examples where a big company can, even though, let's say there's a smaller company and they're in the right, a big company can sometimes come and they can basically, even though they know that they're not going to win, they'll just drown the small company in fees. I'm not really phrasing this question very well, but how can bigger companies manipulate the law because they have more money and drown smaller companies with lawyers' fees and basically just drag out cases? So if you're like a small company that can only afford $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 worth of lawyer fees, and there's another company that has 10 lawyers on payroll, I mean, you're not going to beat them no matter what.
I mean,
is that the reality?
That's a huge issue that the battle has been trying to tackle for years. It's what we call access to justice, right? The fact that
access to justice.
It's the fact that having your rights recognized is extremely expensive, because if you're a corporation, you can't represent yourself. So if you're a small business, you're a corporation, like you're an incorporated company, you need to be represented by an attorney. If you're getting sued personally or you're suing someone personally, you could represent yourself personally. But if you're a corporation, you need to go before the court.
So if I get a lawsuit brought onto me
on KBD or
on KBD,
you need to be represented by a lawyer.
Interesting.
Whereas if someone was suing Curtis Killen, you could go and represent yourself personally.
Not very smart, but I could if I wanted to. Yeah.
It's tough, but then there's small claims courts, right? So anything under 15,000, you're not allowed attorneys.
Okay, got it.
So in those kind of cases, you have to go and they do it yourself. But to your question
so access to justice,
I mean, look, you see it. Obviously, it's there's ways in order to not necessarily manipulate the system, but to just keep hammering the other party with different types of motions. You want to put a party through what we call pretrial examinations, or what they call in the States like deposition, right? Where you're in a room like this. They have their lawyers, you have yours. You have to go through sometimes up to 5 hours of pretrial examination questioning. So let's say I sued KBD. KBD has the right now to depose me or put me through pretrial examination of all my allegations that I have in the originating application. So the case, the suit that I used to sue you. And those could go up to 5 hours. And then so you have, not only you have your lawyer fees, you have the stenographer fees. So the stenographers, they type everything out.
Okay.
So you usually see them there. They have like a little mask over their face. They're kind of like speaking into the mic and and they're typing. And so after the fact, you get sometimes up to, it's a 200, 300 page book. Everything that's said, every word that is discussed, every question, every answer, everything the lawyers say to each other. That's why sometimes you're going to go off record and what have you, but everything is put into the stenographer notes, the transcripts of the pretrial examinations. That alone, look, you're talking about a 5 hour pretrial examination. Then you have to go through and read everything within those transcripts. When you're going through a pretrial examination, what you can request from the other party is undertakings. So let's say I go, you know what, Curtis, I need you to provide me with because it's relevant to the case, your financial statements for the last 3 years of KBD Insurance. Boom. it's an undertaking. So after the stenographer notes are provided, you have to send me those. And sometimes there's lists of hundreds of undertakings. I need that email between you and Adam dated X date. Send me that. I need this. So you're talking about so much back and forth. That alone, you know what I mean? And especially depending on your lawyer, you know, sometimes lawyers, we're ranging, you see it now, you know, anywhere between $250, but you go to a tax lawyer, you're talking about $1,000 an hour. But a good litigation lawyer, someone who's been in litigation for years, $500, $600 an hour. So fees go up quick.
So the big companies will try and increase. They'll try and make it so that there's so much work for the small guy that the small guy can never even make it to court because they'll just drown him in
proceedings, different types of proceedings.
Drown him in proceedings,
right? Because then, again, in these pretrial examinations,
and how often are you seeing this now? Because
this look, I would have to say most in the Civil Code of Procedure. Yeah. So what guides, you know, litigation in civil law, there's the concept of proportionality. So the legal fees involved must be proportional to the claim in question. So if you're getting sued for $50,000, doesn't make sense that you're going through, you know, all kinds of pretrial examinations. There's limits on the time for pretrial examinations depending on the amount of the claim, but the amount of time and proceedings and legal fees needs to be proportional to the amount of the claim.
And what's that number? It's like a gray area?
It's something that, so you'll go to like case management before the judge to say, look, it's no longer proportional. I've been in cases
like, but what's no longer proportional? So like if you're getting sued, let's say I'm getting sued for $50,000, no longer proportional would be what? We're at $100,000 in fees.
I mean, you shouldn't be going more than what the actual claim is. I mean, if especially something, look, certain cases, this is how they judge it, right? It's depending on it's a case-by-case basis because, you know, some cases are a lot more detailed or specific in certain kind of aspects. But let's say it's a collection matter, you know, you provided services, they didn't pay you for the services. There shouldn't be hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to discuss, you know, those kind of questions. Where things you'll see it get very expensive is latent defect matters, because now you're talking about expert fees. So latent defect, you sell your house. The people realize that they're calling in their legal warranty.
Yeah. Hey, there's a leak.
Yeah. I opened the wall. There's moisissure, moisture, and what have you, mold everywhere. Now, okay, then you're sending in experts, and the experts have to testify. You got to pay the experts to come in and testify in court. They have to put reports together. You know, so you always have to consider what is the amount in question. And how much are you going to put towards that? Like you can't be just hammering all kinds of procedures.
But as much as there's like safeguards in place, I mean, because there's still like, I'll give you the example we were talking about yesterday. So it's like on the telephone. So one of my this is back in the day. One of my father's clients. So he was a food distributor, made a lot of money, very, very, very good businessman. And there was like I think it was like private equity. Anyways, it was like a multinational private equity company. A lot bigger, a lot more money than him. They said, hey, can you come run our food distribution company? We're having a lot of trouble. We need to get everything in order. We're not doing well right now. He goes, cool. Sign the contract. He had, bonuses in place. Okay, if you hit this, X, Y, Z, we're going to give you a bonus of X, Y, Z. Fast forward 3 years. Every single metric that he was supposed to hit in order to get the bonus, he hit it, and then some. The big company went, nah, we're not going to give you the bonus. He's like, well, what do you mean? It's all in paper here. It's black and white. You asked me to hit this number. I hit the number. They're like, sue us. And then he went back. And this is a guy, it's not worth like $1 million. He's probably worth, $20, $30, $40 million himself, maybe more. He's not poor. He's got a lot of money himself. Yeah. Goes to his lawyer, and he's a Canadian guy, and this was an American company. Okay. Goes to his lawyer and says, what do I do? And the lawyer's like, bro, settle. That is the fucking if you do this, that's the fucking greasiest. A deal is a fucking deal. Yeah. That is the greasiest shit that like I've ever heard of. it's so black and white, and it's a guy looking at you in your face saying like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Because people, they know that, okay, we have the resources. We're going to squeeze you as much as we can and just get a settlement for what we know you have the right, but we're just going to squeeze you until we settle at the number that we're okay with.
Do you think this is more frequent in Canada, in the U.S. in comparison to Canada?
Yeah, I find.
And why do you think it's more frequent in the U.S.?
They're a lot more litigious.
Yes.
In a lot more aggressive.
Yeah.
When it comes to litigation in the States, like I don't want to use the term, but they're a little more like cowboy, if you will, when it comes to suing. They'll sue for absolutely anything, and that's why you see it like anywhere. Like let's say you go to a bar in the States, and they think you've had one too many. They're not going to serve you. You don't really see that here, but why? Because of the liability factor, and in the States, the liability factor of, we're going to sue you for $100 billion. Obviously not, but you know what I mean? Like you'll see those, we're suing you, I spilled coffee on myself, $100 million. Yeah, anything of that nature. I felt defamation, again, $50 million. All of these suits because there's no cap on non-pecuniary damages, if you will. And that's why here, I mean, it's very different because like, we have caps.
Are there more safeguards in place
in Canada yes.
versus in the United States? Got it.
So
that access to justice term that you mentioned a little bit earlier, that's not really as applicable in the United States.
Well,
basically, like my question, just an oversimplified version of my question is like, how often do you think like these big companies bully the smaller companies and just drown them in lawyers' fees so that the small company can never win, even though they're in the right? The big company is going to be like, well, what the fuck are you going to do about it? I'm going to wipe my ass with that contract. That contract means nothing to me. I'm going to drown you in lawyers' fees. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's kind of like the same thing in the movie The Founder. So the movie The Founder and with Ray Kroc, the McDonald's movie, right? And he got to a point, he was so big. Remember at the end of the movie, have you seen the movie?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent
Great
movie. So
fantastic.
And, at the end, even though the small guys, the original founders of McDonald's, they were technically right. But Ray Kroc's like, what are you going to do about it?
Yep.
It's like, bro, I'm multinational. I have way more money than you. You're never going to win this. I'll just drown you in lawyers' fees. Take this what I'm giving you. Take it or leave it.
I do have to say, like, so in Quebec, the Civil Code of Procedure, the new one came into place in 2016. Okay. And there are safeguards in there to limit that kind of, bullying foul activities.
Play, yeah.
There's abusive procedure. There's declaring someone a quarrelsome litigant. There's like certain steps that you could take, even though you're the small guy, to kind of limit that. And the legislation to this effect for civil procedure and litigation, you have to cooperate with your confrère, your colleague. So to just be aggressive and bully and you have to provide a valid defense. So let's say, one of the first steps of litigation, you do have to provide a summary defense. If it's absolute horseshit, you could sue the other party for abusive procedure because they don't have a valid defense.
And you can't do that in the U.S.
So, look, I'm not an expert in U.S. laws, but I know one of the questions you had sent me was, like, how does it, like, that access to justice? Because in the States, they do a lot on that contingency nature. So
Can you dumb that down for
a contingency nature?
Like myself?
We're gonna keep it super simple. So I go to Starbucks. I'm at Starbucks. The barista spills a coffee on me. Boiling hot coffee burns my chest. I'm scarred forever. Let's say
it burns.
There's gonna be a lawyer down the street coming in. We call them ambulance chasers. Who's gonna come in and be like, "Look, I'm gonna represent you. Whatever we get, either as a judgment or as a settlement, I'm going to take 30%. Okay, so we're going to go now sue Starbucks for $10 million. Let's say they settle at $10 million, whatever. Let's just say I take $3 million, you take $7 million. And that's how they go about it. So it's what we call a contingency nature.
So it's like they get a piece of the pie if they win. So they're
if
incentivized to, number one, sue for as much as possible.
Exactly.
And number two, to basically to win the case, because if they win the case, they're going to get more money.
Or settle, right?
Yeah.
They could settle it.
And if they don't win the case, I guess there's a flat fee, or do they get zero, typically speaking?
Sometimes, especially with the ambulance chasers, there's a file opening fee, but that's it, right? But that's why, because
so
in
the people
States,
have nothing to lose.
Exactly. And that's why they call them ambulance chasers, right? Because they just come around someone, they've been in an accident. They come up, okay, who can we sue now? and let's go try and sue them, get the biggest settlement we can. And that's how they make their money.
This is a perfect segue to go into. Did you have an opportunity to kind of look at the Elon Musk case?
Yeah, of course. Super interesting.
So for the viewers, basically, long story short, and to make this very, very, very simple, Elon Musk, so the media are going to paint it as like, what a evil, this is way too much money. It is a lot of money. I think it's 45 or 56
Yeah, now
billion.
it's at like, it's fluctuating between 50 because it depends on, it's a stock option.
Correct.
So it depends on the share price.
It's a lot of money. But basically, so this was back a couple of years ago, and Elon Musk made a deal with the shareholders and said, all right, if I 10x the company, I'm going to 10x this company, Tesla. If I 10x that, this is what I want my compensation package to be. A deal is a deal. All the shareholders agreed. Boom. Okay, cool. And then the Delaware judge said, no, that's too much money. They had to basically, the shareholders had to re-vote again, which I think happened a week or 2 weeks ago, sometime in June.
June
and they
11th
voted,
or 13th.
Yeah, they voted again. 73% of the shareholders said, yep, a deal is a deal. He's entitled to that package. And now, so I don't want to focus too much on that. I want to focus on the part on the side here where it's basically the lawyers in this case are trying to claim $5.6 billion.
Yeah,
and I read an article this morning, which is kind of funny.
It's wild.
Elon Musk goes, we'll give you $12 million.
Still, $12 million.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In
But
legal
so
fees.
I'd like your perspective on this because I don't understand. I don't understand anything actually about how lawyers all of a sudden got involved in this.
It's so one, the institutional investors were not happy with this pay package. They were not happy.
But they shouldn't have voted for it in the first place then.
So it was only the first vote in 2018 because what happened
was 73%. It was 73%. I think the last one was 72. It's basically the same people. The same percentage.
Well, they're saying a lot of it's like the retail investors that really kind of push this through. But what happened was in 2018 is because the board had to approve this pay plan, right?
Yeah, but everyone else at the same. I just have to put this in and sorry, I keep cutting you off. It's just basically like, okay, fine, yeah, it's a lot of money. They 10x the stock.
Yeah.
He 10x the fucking stock.
So in 2018, it was at 60 billion, and now he's at 650 billion.
It was even more at one point. It was over $1 trillion at one point. So these institutional investors, I mean, fuck you. Dude, I made you 10x your money.
Yeah.
Pay me.
But now they're
fuck them.
If
anyone who says yes, it's a deal, and now all of a sudden says no, I changed my mind, fuck you. Seriously,
it's also
like,
honestly,
a deal is a deal.
I found the way it was structured is super interesting. He had these essentially like 12 tranches that he had to hit, and 28 kind of like marks on like market capitalization, earnings, revenue.
I hit them all.
Hit them all.
Like
hit them all.
Yeah.
So what that came out, so each like tranche he got one, came out to like 1% of the stock. So like 12% of stock came out to, it's like 300 million stock options that he could purchase at $20, about $23 a share. The stock right now is at, I don't know, $200.
Yeah.
So that's where they like calculate that like 45 to 56 billion is because he's getting those 300 million stocks at 23 at the stock option price, at the strike option price of $23, right? So whatever the delta is what he's actually making. But what's interesting about that is that part of that payment plan, he has to hold on to those shares for another 5 years before he could sell them and actually capitalize on them. So that's why I find it interesting why they're claiming it's such a like imbroglio of justice, if you will. Like even the judgment back in January, because she's claiming that essentially
this is the Delaware judge.
Yeah, the Delaware judge claiming that the board of directors, when they presented it to the shareholders back in 2018, did not provide all of the information. The shareholders could not provide like a clear and consent kind of vote, that the board of directors, that there's a conflict of interest because I mean his brother's on the board of directors, he has a couple other people, I don't know exactly, but she was saying that they called it like a bro show, that they're all buddies and that they're giving him, way too much, and it was irresponsible on the part of the board of directors, the way they went about it. So even now, I mean, this new vote that happened, it doesn't change the judgment, which is interesting.
But my question more specifically is like, what's the strategy of the lawyers on this case, and why are they trying to take so much money? Why do they want a $5.6 billion payout?
That I've never seen that. That's like historical, right? Like where are you getting? They're asking it in Tesla shares. Like it's a payout of 5.6 billion in Tesla shares to pay their legal fees. How does I mean, in Quebec, we have what's called a provision for costs. So when there's a huge discrepancy, you know, you could request from the other party. There's different, you know, criteria, but that the other party has to fund your legal fees. You see it a lot in divorce cases as well too. But 6 billion, I mean, that's I think what is it, on July 8th, I think that case is happening.
I think so, yeah.
It's unheard of. We're talking about a few court dates. I understand there's a lot going on, but the facts are simple. They're claiming that the vote was not justified, or that the pay package is not justified because the board of directors are
all his buddies,
and that you know, they're enamored by Musk, and the fact that when he was saying that he was going to leave the company if he didn't get this pay package, so on and so forth. So they're saying that the steps involved to get to that vote were not duly, you know, or properly done, let's say. And they're saying that the actual structure of the corporation for this massive company is like more what you would see in a smaller private company. They're saying that the structure is not there to ensure the shareholders' rights.
Do you think that this sets a precedent, though? And we were discussing this yesterday. The issue that I find with this is the fact that the shareholders and the board said yes the first time. The shareholders and the board said yes the second time after the court proceedings. Why is the government getting involved in a company, a private or public, to this extent? Like, if you want to, if all the shareholders in a company agree to pay the CEO or whatever this amount of money, that's up to them. Now, some of these CEOs get paid way too much money. I totally agree with you, but you know, that it's the point I have a common theme here is that it's a very slippery slope when government really starts to stick their tentacles into every single part of our lives and every single part of society and business as well. So it's kind of like, I don't think it's their place to be saying something like that. And I think the other part too with Elon Musk, the fact that, I mean, he's always in the news, and the legacy media in particular, and all like the kind of left-leaning media outlets, they hammer him. And I think that they hate the fact that he owns X because it's basically like the newspaper of the internet. Yep. And so it's very important, and he can kind of control, they can't control the narrative anymore.
Exactly.
And because he doesn't want to play ball like Google does, like Apple does, like Microsoft does, you know, it's kind of like they're in the pockets. I don't say in the pockets, but they are very close to the security surveillance state. They're very close to the government. They're very close to Congress. They donate a lot of money, and Elon Musk isn't playing that game. And so I think it pisses them off. That's why you always see them like, I bet you anything, if this was another CEO, this wouldn't even be an issue. It wouldn't be a case. I think they just let them make as much money as they want. That's what I honestly think. And it's a shame to see, because like they're going after, like Elon Musk bought, this is what I personally think. I don't think he bought Twitter to frickin' make money. I think he genuinely,
44 billion,
he has enough money. But I think he genuinely bought Twitter to protect free speech. I genuinely believe that. Okay. I think he's being honest when he says that. Yeah. You know, because, and it was so obvious. I mean, did you ever see the Twitter files with Matt Taibbi?
No, but I heard.
Dude, it's like not one media outlet picked up the Twitter files. Not one.
I know.
Not one, which is
well,
insane.
They have these every
dude. There was correspondence
has...
between the FBI, between the CIA, and Twitter. It was so obvious.
They all have their own agenda. Yes, you know, and so that's why you have to. Even us, as just regular beings here, regular humans, we need to be very particular in how we consume the news.
Yes.
Because every news outlet has their own agenda. So I think it's very important that you know, just kind of off topic, is that you read different sources of news. So not just, you know, CNN all the time or just Fox News, or, you know, I'm saying really at the left and right here, but you really kind of, it's tough now that we have to kind of do our own research almost.
You have to draw your own conclusions.
And to draw your own conclusions in order to get, it's tough. We're not getting like the facts on the face of it. Everything has an opinion to it sometimes, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and like that's one thing too for Twitter. I mean, there's some stuff on Twitter, like when he had the interview with Don Lemon, and basically there was an anti-Semitical comment, and So Don Lemon, he looks at it, he goes, what do you think of that tweet? And Elon Musk is like, I think that's terrible. I don't agree with what that guy is saying at all. And he goes, well, why don't you take it off the platform then? He's like, Don, you're not listening to what I'm saying. It's like, free speech is our most fundamental right. And as soon as government, and people need to understand this, and you can't have, yes, there's free speech, but no. Slippery slope. And governments, you can't have the government or any institution for that matter be the arbiter of what's true and what isn't.
It's because it's such a slippery slope.
Yes.
Obviously, there's things that shouldn't be out there. It's what's the criteria?
That's the litmus test to see if someone actually truly believes in free speech. If you see someone across there and they're saying something that you disagree with, but they still go, you know what, I don't agree with what they're saying at all, but I support the right that they're able to say that, will show you if someone is actually a believer in free speech or not. And I think we don't have this discussion enough in Canada. It's more of a fundamental right in the U.S. But I mean, there's more and more stuff like hate speech crimes. They passed some law, I think, in Scotland not too long ago.
Well, we have laws in Canada too about
I'm not a lawyer on that.
You can't just spew racist kind of jargon all over the internet either, especially if it causes kind of hatred to spew. Inciting that kind of hatred is actually. I don't know exactly. I'm not it's not my field, but I know.
But I think reading. That's where, as much as I don't want someone spewing racist.
Yeah, it's more just that it's something that could incite, kind of.
But you see how gray that is.
But that's what I'm saying. It's very difficult. It's a very, very difficult topic because. Yes, the right to free speech is paramount, and we need to. We live in a free. We're not, North Korea or even look at Russia now. You know what I mean? You can't even say anything about the war in Russia without going to jail, or especially at the beginning of the war. That's not the society we want to live in. But I do think that there needs to be some limits on what
I agree. I think there's one you can't threaten. You can't. I have no idea. So I'm talking on my ass. But so now we're on the topic of kind of this. So I'm gonna preface this next question. So the Roe v. Wade. A lot of people are under the assumption that the federal government wants to ban abortion. And again, I want to make this clear because I don't want to get this taken out of context or any of us to get in trouble here. We're not talking about whether we agree or disagree with abortion. We're not getting into that discussion. But it's basically the understanding, or how the media is portraying it, is the federal government and Trump, more specifically, or the Republican Party, they want to ban abortion federally. So I'd like for you to give us a clear explanation of what's actually happening and what they're trying to do.
Of course. And look, this is a great question. And it's coming up a lot now, given the debate and Trump, what he was discussing during the debate, that he's giving the powers back to the state. I'm just giving the powers back to the state, right? I mean, so in order to understand really what's going on, you have to just go a little bit back. Look, I'm not an expert in U.S. constitutional law or any of that nature, but I think we have to just premise it a little bit about what was Roe v. Wade, how it got judged, and what happened in 2022 when it got overturned. So essentially, I mean, Roe v. Wade was a judgment in 1973 where they essentially judged that the right to abortion is a fundamental right. Okay? The woman's right to proceed with an abortion is their fundamental right. Okay? That is covered by the Constitution, so that it's actually under the right to privacy. Okay? So it's like the 14th Amendment of the Constitution in 1868. That's what they base this decision on. It's based on this due process clause of the 14th Amendment. And this was in 1868 that this clause came in. Interesting to note, there was already a bunch of state laws banning abortions at the time when this clause came in. Nevertheless, that's what I'm speaking very summarily, so for the viewers, you know what I mean? I'm not getting, I just want to kind of give an overview so that you understand what's happening now. So essentially, basically, so the judgment was rendered based on that fact, so that states could no longer legify or create legislation that would ban women's right to abortion. And they made it that they broke it into trimesters, so that you couldn't ban abortions in the first trimester, In the second trimester, the only type of law that a state can make is with respect to regulations concerning the medical practice to do it. So how in the because obviously the fetus is older, so there needs to be, they could make some type of criteria around how.
So it's basically like, okay, you can have an abortion between
first trimester,
between 1 and 8, you're
and
allowed,
then second
after
trimester.
8,
so it basically goes kind of like to 24 weeks, I would say, something to that nature. Sure. And then in the third trimester, they could create legislation to ban abortion after a certain point. Okay. So that was the law, basically. So it was now became federal law that women had this right to abortion, and it was a constitutional right. Okay, it was a fundamental right. So what happened was that states were no longer allowed to create or enact legislation that was against that was anywhere different to that. Because it was a fundamental right, it was basically assessed as like you could not waver from it. It's because it's fundamental, there's like a strict interpretation of it because it's a fundamental right. So if laws are trying to kind of deviate in some way, there's a strict interpretation. If there's a somewhat deviation,
and so that would be, for example, like obviously this won't be an issue in California, and it like different strokes for different folks, and sometimes like the argument on the side of the. It's not like people want to like control some people do, but I don't want to get into this, but it's just most of the time, from my understanding, people that don't agree with abortion, generally speaking, they're very religious and they think that you're killing a human.
Yeah.
That's the argument. There are arguments on both sides. Again, we're not getting into this, but so correct me if I'm wrong. If there was a state, like let's say a very religious state, I don't know what the most religious state is, say Louisiana or something. Yeah. So they weren't allowed to implement a law that would ban
abortion in the first 2 trimesters.
Even though probably, let's say, a high percentage of the people living in that state said, no, we don't agree with this. We're religious. We think you're killing a baby. We don't want this to happen.
Exactly.
They weren't allowed to implement it.
And that's what happened in 2022 or 2021 when it came through, and it had to go. The judgment was rendered in 2022, but it was basically it's called the Dobbs case. Yeah. But where the state of Mississippi was trying to enact legislation that after 15 weeks, to ban of abortion after 15 weeks. So that's where this whole overturned judgment came into place, and that was rendered by Justice Alito. And he came in saying that there's nothing actually in the Constitution, the way it's read, implicitly or otherwise, that provides the American citizen or the American woman citizen the right to abortion. Because the initial Roe v. Wade judgment is, like I said, it's based on this right to privacy, this constitutional right to privacy, and they base it on this fact that a woman who has to go through an abortion, it's going to cause her distress, it's going to cause anyone around her and the unwanted child, they call it, distress and psychological distress, and they based it loosely on this right to privacy and this due process clause. So when it came back to the fold in this Supreme Court in 2022, that the justices now, and there was obviously, it's a Republican kind of controlled panel now, their whole notion is that there's nothing actually in the Constitution that protects this right. It was initially the right to legislate on abortion up until 1973 was a state power. They always had the right to it. So just because of the Roe v. Wade, it became a federal jurisdiction, if you will, loosely speaking. And
so they're basically just saying, hey, we don't want this to be a decision for the federal government anymore. We want to get this back to the U.S.
They overstepped it in the fact that, especially when they started legislating on the trimesters. Yeah, they're saying that it wasn't their jurisdiction to kind of state this or make those kind of.
There's
rules.
A lot more. Like this happens the same thing in Canada. There's a lot more people when they think about the government, they just go, oh, it's like one big blob. But there's actually a lot more push and pull between, let's talk about Canada, between the federal government and between the provincial governments. We're seeing it right now. Like there's a lot of provincial governments, in particular Alberta, they're not happy with the federal government, and then you have like the municipal government layer, but it's the same thing in the US. So it's like people think that government's just it's one institution.
No,
it kind of is, but there's often a lot of times where federal government, they're trying to get more power over the country, and the state governments are kind of like, no, leave me alone, I'm going to run this jurisdiction here. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
but to kind of just like for the viewers,
just
go ahead,
bring it
wrap
on
it up
that. Because then we'll talk on that note, because that's an interesting topic, the division of powers, right?
Yeah.
In a government.
Yeah.
But essentially what happened in this Dobbs judgment is that they gave the power back to the state. So that's correct. So now it's no longer, why there was so much backlash is because they essentially, by that judgment, removed the constitutional right for women to decide what they can do with their bodies. Right, and they gave that power to the states, and what a lot of the states, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, like trigger laws. So while this was going through the court system, this Mississippi case over a few years, the states were enacting different types of legislation banning abortions that would only take effect once the Supreme Court judgment was rendered. So the day that judgment was rendered, you had like 6 or 7 states. Like there's a famous one, Section 8 or whatever in Texas, that came into effect as soon as that judgment was rendered. So that's where a lot of the backlash came from, because now the states are free to basically ban abortion. And obviously there's certain exceptions, for the rape, the safety, rape, safety of the life of the woman. Yeah. I'm not going to go into all of them, but essentially what ended up happening is now the states can legislate what they want. In certain states, they hadn't changed their laws. Like some had laws against abortions from 1831. 1868, they had laws against abortion, which were never changed. So those laws banning abortions came back into effect when this judgment was rendered. So that's why there was so much, backlash against it, because now the states essentially, again, generally speaking, have free reign to
ban abortion if they want.
To ban abortion.
Yeah.
So that's where, because it's no longer a fundamental right or a constitutional right based on the Constitution of the American people.
Yeah, I get arguments on both sides, but it always goes. It's a very touchy subject.
It's a touchy subject.
But it's like always. I've never heard anyone who's against abortion, I've never heard another argument other than like they're almost always religious. I think every single person I've spoken to who doesn't agree with abortion, they're religious. And again, it's not like they're not trying to control the body. I'm sure there are some people out there, but it's just basically like, no, I'm religious. I think you're killing a human being. I don't agree with that. That's their argument. And the argument's on the other side too. It's like, well, it's my body. I don't want to have a baby. Yeah. I want to get rid of it.
Like my wife, she has 3 sisters, you know what I mean? So like I hear it. It's basically, why does the government have a right to decide what I do with my body? And then the other side is, well, there's the baby inside, so you're killing a human. Yeah. I mean, look, this debate that's been
it'll never end.
It'll never end, and everyone's going to kind of be in their own position, and
it'll never end.
And then that's it, you know. So for us today, I think it was just so that people understand that. So
now it's not a ban. The federal government isn't banning abortion. They're just giving the decision back to the states. Whether you agree or disagree with that, a whole other topic. That's what's happening.
That's essentially what happened. Yeah. So exactly, the state of California, they have their own rules of when you can abortion.
Like if you're in California, you could still get an abortion.
You could get an abortion. Yeah. Whereas other states like Texas, Mississippi, they have. Okay, a lot of the times they'll put weeks. So if it's within 15 weeks, you could have an abortion. Anytime after, you cannot.
Got it.
So now it's up to the states to decide those rules.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about next? So we got the Roe v. Wade. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, let's talk to the business people now.
Okay.
So starting a business is starting to, let's say you're in Canada or US or wherever, business is starting to go well. Got some revenue, got a couple of employees, and you're like, you know what? It's time for me to get a lawyer, and not just like a ticky-tack 1-800 lawyer where you call them up and just to get 1 or 2 things done, like for us right now, it's like I keep thinking, I'm not gonna have to, like, no offense, I don't want to talk to you about what I want to talk to you as a person.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to call you up all the time about these things.
Of course.
But it just happens more and more and more. So for example, for us, I'm an insurance broker. You haven't dealt with it personally, but like it's quite frequent that we'll get people will try and sue us. All our calls are recorded and we have a pretty good system in place. But so I'll give you an example. One guy's house burned down. Okay. And the insurance company refused to pay the claim because he lied about having a criminal record. So the insurance company refused the claim. Next, his lawyer obviously is going to go, okay, who can we go to next? Oh, the broker.
Yeah.
So they go to the broker. So we had to send the recorded calls. And at the beginning of the recorded calls, all of our salespeople are trained. There's a list of questions before we start anything. One of the questions is, do you have a criminal record? The guy said no. So it was like, here's a recorded call, and I'm sure the lawyer looked at him and said, buddy, you don't have a leg to stand on. Like, you're fucked. So my question for you is, what should a business be looking for when they're trying to find a lawyer? And then the question after that is basically like, for you, when you're a lawyer, what do you like to see with your clients?
Of course.
Okay. So we'll start with the question number one.
Obviously, look, so what baseline, you're looking for a lawyer, you want a lawyer in the field that you're looking for, right? In the type of law that you need, right? So let's say you're a business, you need a lawyer to, one, take care of your minute books, let's say. If there's a specific type of litigation that you see the most, right? So let's say in a construction company, they have very specific types of litigation. There's specific type of rights that they can use to, get payment, put liens, what have you. So the biggest thing, look, Montreal, I mean, especially Montreal, we have thousands and thousands of lawyers. You see it a lot more now. Lawyers are specializing a lot more in specific fields. So I think the first step is definitely trying to find, the lawyer in your field. You're not going to, if you're a business, you're not going to go get a criminal lawyer, which we've seen, where, because it's their buddy and he just kind of helps them. But when you're dealing with that lawyer who's in criminal, you could tell that, okay, now we're wasting time. So I think step one, always, try and find someone who's within your field. And the biggest thing, I mean, it's the oldest kind of way to get, even from clients to is just the word of mouth. I think word of mouth, especially when it comes to a lawyer, is speak to your friends, speak to other people that that had to deal with a lawyer, what their experience was with that lawyer, how they enjoyed working with them. Because as you know, it's an intimate relationship with the lawyers. We're dealing with some of your most prized possessions.
I speak to every week.
Life. Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So someone that you're comfortable with, someone that you can feel comfortable with calling, when you have a question, that is going to be there for you. I think that's what you get the most with, you see kind of complaints. The bar gives us stats about complaints to the bar is not getting back to you on time, not answering, your questions within a reasonable delay. So you got to obviously test, make some calls, sit down with a couple lawyers, see who's available. And that's, it's a step-by-step process, but yeah, I think that's generally it. I think really.
So it's pretty simple. Just make sure you're getting a lawyer. Do your
within
due
your
diligence.
field too.
Yeah, and make sure that they work in your field. So, so to reiterate what you just said, if you're, I need a corporate lawyer, someone who's experienced with mergers and acquisitions, corporate law, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, go on their websites, check.
Don't go get a criminal lawyer.
Yeah,
like Mike Corey shouldn't be my lawyer.
No, exactly. Like maybe because he's a crown prosecutor, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd probably say I don't pay enough tax either. So.
Yeah. So that's it. So don't get me wrong. I get calls,
and I pay a lot of tax. But
but that's it. Even there's tax lawyers, right? Specifically to deal with types of tax litigations. There's firms that deal strictly in tax litigation. If you're going through a divorce, some firms are specifically family lawyers. My firm, we have family law. We don't do any criminal, but family law, litigation, mergers, acquisitions, the whole corporate side, trademarks. So you go, you check. Obviously, there's the Google. You see Google corporate.
So do your homework.
Or whatever. Do your homework. I think that's the best, and especially you want to have a long-term relationship with your lawyer. You know what I mean? You don't want to have to be switching lawyers every few years. It's an absolute headache. You got to get your books. You got to.
Plus, it also takes time.
Yeah.
For we started this relationship relatively recently. It takes time for you, I would imagine. Correct me if I'm wrong. It takes time to learn or get a feel for the structure of the company, how the company operates, understand the company itself, the hierarchy of the company. It's not just. like I'm sure when you were looking at all the stuff, like for example, some of the share transactions that we've done, changing ownership in the company, like you have to do your
of course.
Like it takes you a couple hours to understand.
You go through the books and see exactly like how you guys started and how'd you get here.
Would you say you understand our company structure now a lot better than, for example, a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, I got all of your corporate minute books a few weeks ago prior to what we're doing now. So yeah, obviously I had to go through all of that just to get a very good sense of what we're doing because of these next steps that we're taking. So I have to have a full understanding. I mean, that's what you guys pay me for, is to make sure that I know your company front to back. And that's what I do with all my corporate clients. You got to make sure that you know what they're doing. And so that when I get a call from someone, okay, we want to do a reorganization, or we want to go buy someone, or we want to go, we're looking to sell, you make sure that everything's in order and you can move forward right away. Because sometimes, let's say you get an offer, someone wants to buy you. You want to make sure that all of your kind of affairs are in order and I know what's going on, so that if I get a letter of intent, let's say, my client sends me a letter of intent, someone wants to buy certain shares of his company or just a portion of his company, I got to know what's in that shareholders agreement that he'll have to do in advance, let's say with respect to the other shareholders, in order to proceed with a sale, because obviously, this right of first purchase, tag along, and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, I mean, you want to go with someone that you can trust, that you can talk to, that you have confidence in. I think that's the biggest thing. And
what do you, because it's a two-way street.
Of course.
What do you like to see with clients? Because it's the same thing like with us. We have roughly 1,000 commercial insurance clients.
Okay.
We have many more home and car insurance clients. That's more commoditized, I would say, than the commercial insurance. But the commercial insurance, there are instances where I'll be working with them and I don't want to work with this person anymore. Whether it's they don't pay on time, they call for ticky-tack questions. And like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be answering, but if you're calling your insurance broker for a business that's stagnant every single week for like these stupid questions, number one, go read the policy. If you're a business that's scaling like crazy and it's changing a lot, that's a different story. You have every right to freaking call up your commercial insurance broker to make sure the insurance is on track. But the point I was going to make is there have been instances where I will non-renew clients. Like, I don't want to be your insurance broker anymore because it's not worth my time. So what do you look for, and what suggestions can you make to business owners looking to basically be a good client to their lawyer?
I mean, look, obviously there's the financial aspect, that they pay their bills on time. And look, I'm not a stickler to, I understand, like I said, like I grew up with a lot of the companies that I'm with, and I understand every company, especially growing companies, they have other bills to pay, and usually these legal fees fall right at the bottom. So I'm not 100% stickler on that, but obviously a client who pays, on time is always appreciated. A biggest thing is just mutual respect. I think that's a huge thing that I see even growing up. You learn about this mutual respect. Some clients I've had in the past, because they're paying you, they think they could just treat you,
you're their employee.
They treat you like an employee, or they treat you like, you're working for me. You're gonna do what I say, so on and so forth. And that's a huge thing. Like, especially when it comes more towards the litigation part. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you're gonna tell him to go fuck himself, whatever. Let me do my job as the legal expert on this. This is what I suggest. I think I'm here to protect your interests. I know what you want. I'm obviously, like, we're on the same team, and that's something we always look for. Like, obviously you have every right to question, our decisions, but our decisions are based on, our expertise of the law. We understand what your rights are and how best to protect those rights. So I think though that's something that it also takes time too, because some people, you see it with people who've never had a lawyer before, right? Kind of teaching them like, look, let's do the back and forth. We're going to talk about it. And I have no problem always explaining every step of the way. You people in business industries and what have you don't have to come in with a full understanding of what civil law is and what a procedure is and how things
that's
work.
What the lawyers are for.
So what I like is people who have the patience to let's go through it, let's talk, and let's go step by step. And what's tough is that, look, the litigation and our legal system is notoriously slow. So that's, something that.
When you say our, you mean Quebec?
Quebec. Even honestly across Canada, it's extremely slow. So having, clients who have that understanding, and that's our job too, to ensure that they have an understanding. Set the expectations right at the beginning. And even when it comes to billing, it's important on us to set those expectations right away. You know what I mean? Like,
have you ever had clients where you've been like, I don't want to work with you anymore?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it happens.
And what happened, like, in that particular case?
You bill them, you give them their files back, and then you move on. Yeah, look, very few and far between. I think really those ones have just been people who are just extremely disrespectful. Like, I don't have time for this. You know what I mean? Like, I have enough work. I have enough clients that I'm not going to start dealing with someone who just makes me feel like shit because he's trying to talk down on me, or that they're texting you, middle of the night all day. Look, we live in a generation with expecting the answer. It's 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then calling. Exactly. And just like, I don't need that in my life.
Yeah.
Look, I wish you all the best. I don't need that kind of. There's one. Yeah. I mean, look, he paid every bill right away, but it was just, I hate talking to you.
Yeah.
Literally, you call me and I get.
You look at your phone, you're like, oh.
Yeah, like it's not
right.
something, look, we work to enjoy our jobs, obviously to make a living, but I'm lucky enough that I have a large enough clientele and I have enough work that I don't need to take everybody on.
And it's the 80-20 rule. So it's like, this is the rule of life. I say this all the time. 20% of your clients or 20% of your friends or whatever, 20% of your clients will take up 80% of your time. And you have to do, as a business owner, you have to do a good job of identifying that 20% and getting rid of them.
Yep.
Because they will take up all of your fucking time. And most of the time, I'll bet you anything, they probably don't bring in that much revenue to the office either.
You learn that
80-20 rule, man.
That's something and I agree 100%. And that's something you just learn with experience.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could do. I remember when I was a younger lawyer, I took everyone file on.
It's like salespeople, you take
you do everything.
Because you don't have a revenue yet, right?
Yeah.
So you'll take what you can get.
Doing whatever you can to, bring in clients, bring in revenue. I used to do criminal one day, family another day, do a shareholders agreement. And then the next day I'm in court for a construction case. And then, but you took on everything. Yeah. I took on everything. And then you realize the type of clients, okay, sometimes those little files, where you're arguing over $5,000 bill, let's say, and they take up, half of your day, 3 days a week. You start realizing it. And even now off like a first call, like I could, like an intro call, if you will, like I could tell.
So you'll just be like, hey, I think you're better off going somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, and there's ways about it. There's tricks, but yeah. I mean, honestly, just now I have to be very honest in terms of with respect to, look, this is a case for, let's say, $5,000. I mean, my hourly is $275 an hour. Even if I give it to the students, that's going to eat up like super quick. Like we always have to be very honest in terms of what clients' expectations are. And like, it's one of our obligations. You have to be upfront and honest with them. Tell them, look, I'll review a file and say, look, this is what I think. I don't think you have a good chance. And you have to be honest about it, because there are lawyers out there that just, again, take on everything. Why? Because they bring in the bills, right? Even though you have a shit's chance to win, they'll still take it on because they know that. I'm not saying there's a lot of lawyers out there. It happens. Because
are there like, and this is another question I put on there. So, I remember once, I was looking for a lawyer, and I didn't want to go to you right away, and that had nothing against you. It had to do with, and we'll get into the details, but I felt like there was perhaps maybe like a conflict of interest with something.
Yeah, of course.
So anyways, I went to another lawyer. I was speaking to, I wasn't impressed with him at all at the beginning. And, he was showing up late to meetings. I didn't find he was that intelligent. He didn't seem to have a good understanding of anything. I would give him guidance, and he wouldn't follow anything and first of all, like, I don't really feel like I should give that much guidance because I don't know that much about the law. But my question is, how many, without putting anyone down, lawyers, just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you're smart. Would you agree with that statement? It's kind of like the same thing as like doctors. So just because you're a doctors, yes, we need to have doctors and stuff. But if you actually look at what they study, it's 100% memorization. That's all they do. They don't really have to understand anything. They memorize the slides, they regurgitate the information, boom, you're a doctor. Like and it kind of goes back to, as from the outside in, if you're a corporation or you're a business looking to find a lawyer, just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean that you're smart.
No, of course.
Would you agree with that
statement?
Yeah,
of course. I mean, it's like any other profession, like just because you're
like you could be book smart, you could pass an exam and get 100%.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the bar, exactly. If you could, you study enough, you could pass the bar.
Yeah,
you study enough, you could get through law school. Of course, does that make you, a super smart? No, it doesn't. The legal profession, I think more than a lot, I'm not just because I'm in it, is experience. I think really the bar does not prepare you. I have to give it to the battle. They've changed it. I'll get into it, but coming out of the bar, you're not prepared to be a lawyer at all. You see it. We see it. I see it with our students.
It's like that. It's like that in everything. Accountants, insurance brokers.
You need experience. You need to be in court. You need to fuck up a few times, honestly. Like it's unfortunate, but that's how you learn the lesson. Obviously, you need good guidance. You need good mentors. You need people above you to guide you and teach you when you come out of school. And some people don't have that, right? Some people didn't get that guidance and that teaching of when they were young, and so they developed horrible habits as lawyers, right? And that's what you see. Lawyers with kind of bad habits in terms of the way they're dealing with clients, the way they deal with proceedings. Like sometimes I'll have a client, he gets sued, and you see these proceedings, you're like, oh, a lawyer drafted this. Like there's errors everywhere. The way their reference to the exhibits are not correct. It's unfortunate, but it happens, right? I mean, but that's why when you go to, let's say, like a massive law firm like Stikeman Elliott or what have you, right? I mean, the students charge $275 an hour, right?
I feel like in those big law firms, though, because the experience that I had, I went to a big law firm, like a big one. I was referred to, I played golf with the owner. I was referred through a friend, and he's a smart guy. I actually called him after, and I told him about my experience. He's like, "Ooh, okay, thanks for letting me know. I'll be careful referring people to this law firm." And just a big law firm. Nothing against big law firms, but it's kind of like I got given a guy, and he didn't know what he was doing, and so it's just like I feel like there's always like a sweet spot. Like your company is like a good size.
Yeah, we're about 20 lawyers.
That's like, because it's not small where it's mom and pop.
Yeah.
But it's big enough where you have the expertise, and it's big enough where you're still going to get more of a personalized service. And it's kind of like the same thing, again, or just back to, because the industry that I know, being like a commercial insurance broker. I feel like when you get to like a big, once you're 300, 400, 500, 600 employees or more, it's very difficult. The client has to do more due diligence to find the right commercial insurance broker or the right lawyer and stuff, because you'll just be given to the bottom of the totem pole, and especially if you just want to pay the least amount. Well, you're going to be given most likely not a good lawyer, because I feel like the top lawyers at big law firms, they charge what, $1,500 an hour, $2,000 an hour.
Yeah, you see it, and especially the guys specialized,
and they're dealing with the big corporations and stuff.
Like the massive law firms that have like hundreds and hundreds of lawyers. Yeah, they're dealing with like the Bells of the world, Videotron, like those massive companies. The only thing with the big law firms is because there is more oversight. So usually, because like the younger lawyers everything needs to be almost approved by a senior, and then usually seniors have more experience. So that's why people go towards larger law firms sometimes, because they have this impression of expertise because there's so many. Right, but you're paying a premium. That's why, like at Gattuso, where we try to say like we act as almost like a big law firm, and provide services of a law firm, but as a small law firm price. We don't charge the same fees as like I'm a 5-year lawyer at one of the bigger firms. You're gonna get it's be $500 an hour, $600 an hour.
What percentage would you say of a business? What percentage should be spent on a lawyer? What percentage of revenue? So let's say you're making,
that's a great question.
If you're making like $10 million a year in revenue, or let's even go with profit. So let's say you're making $1 million a year in profit, okay, pre-tax.
Yeah. What
percentage would you say should be spent on a lawyer? Or I guess it depends. Like,
it's a great question, but it definitely, like all lawyers, what do we say? It depends. It depends, right? I mean, because it depends on what you're doing. Because if you're just managing, you're not getting sued, you're not suing anyone.
No
you know,
M&As.
there's unless exactly. So it's really, are you purchasing? Are you purchasing other companies? Are you reorganizing? In those cases, because when you grow, right, you see there's ways to save personally on taxes by reorganizing the corporate structure in a way, and that's where a good accountant comes in. But reorganizing the structure in a way that you personally, the ultimate beneficiary of a company, retains more money in the pocket at the end of the day. You know, and there's different strategies to that nature. So again, to put an actual number or a percentage on profit or retained earnings or revenue towards legal fees, I mean, for a private corporation, a smaller company, or even a bigger company, it really, again, it depends. Like, you see that the massive public companies, they have budgets for law. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're going to put $2 million a year towards legal. And they're looking for it. They're okay, so we're going to go do this because that's our budget and we want to use that budget.
And it ends up like also costing the business less money in the long run. So I'll say something. There was a lease that I signed, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Small lease, and we're still in it right now. I remember specifically going through with the commercial real estate broker that there was a clause where if shit hit the fan and whatever didn't work out, that I would be able to get out of it. I remember specifically talking to her about it and going over in the lease, and it's not in the lease anymore. And I should have, and I wanted to be cheap. And I said, oh, I trust her, what she's doing. And whatever, maybe she missed it, or maybe the landlord pulled a fast one. I signed the lease. I trusted that they didn't take it out. They took it out. They fucking took it out.
That's wild. I mean, that's the biggest. Honestly,
I remember, and had I spent the fucking $500 or $1,000, whatever, for a lawyer to review it, I wouldn't be stuck in this lease. And it's going to be, which is going to cost me way more than the $500 or $1,000.
That's literally what I see the most of.
And this happens way more frequently than I think people think. Because the landlord that we were dealing with it's a big landlord out of Toronto. Bro, I'm like 99% sure, because I remember specifically saying, okay,
requesting that clause.
If this doesn't work, I want to have something that's going to be in there. And I remember talking about it. And it's not, I reread the lease again. We have a commercial real estate broker who like right over is like, there's no, you're in the lease. And I'm like, no, I fucking talked about it. But I signed the lease.
But that's it.
Like,
that's
this shit happens.
Get the calls. It happens all the time. That's honestly one of my biggest things is I get calls after people didn't read the final contract correctly. They didn't want to spend the money on the legal fees, and that's fine.
And I have a question though, but I signed it. I'm fucked. I signed it, right?
It's
my fault.
Because and in these corporate leases, a lot of the times towards the end, in the final clauses, is going to state that you've had the opportunity to consult your own independent attorney. You've reviewed the contract with your own independent attorney, that you understand your obligations. And look, these corporate leases, 35, 40 pages, like, people don't read the fine print. That's our job. And that's where the amount of negotiation that goes on with corporate leases usually is wild.
This mistake's going to cost me like $100,000.
You learn your lesson though. It's a tough lesson to learn, but bro, you learned it. Next time you do a lease, you give me a call.
I'll never do that again. Yeah, exactly. Or anything for that matter. But this is just for other business owners. Don't fucking cheap out on that.
Because it's going to cost you.
Don't trust anyone. And I know there's like certain trust, but especially like your lawyer, I do trust you. And sorry, let me rephrase that. You should trust the people that you work with. The business is built on trust. But if you're dealing with a landlord that you're probably never really going to speak to again, or like, if you're in a lease, you're going to talk to them. But if it's kind of like a one-off, read the fucking lease, read the fine print, and pay the lawyer to freaking read it. I'll never make that mistake again. And I will, every single time there's something that comes my way, I'm going to send it to you. And for business owners out there, send it to your lawyer to reread it. Because like this one, they pulled a fast one on me, and I signed it.
Because that 1 or 2 hours that it takes us to like kind of review, make a comment, so call it whatever, 300, 400.
Because you would have called me and be like, hey, that's not in here.
Especially if you had called me and said, look, just make sure that there's that clause, you know, that I could get out of here, and then one read over, and I'm like, hey, Curtis,
it's not there.
It's not there, buddy.
Like, well, it was there in the last frame, and I compared the contracts. It was in the original draft up. It was out in the last one.
Yeah, that's sneaky. That is bullshit.
It happens, man.
That's bullshit. But that's what it is. I even tell my clients, guys.
Do I have anything to stand on there? Should I?
I mean,
not really. I signed it. Like
kind of. But like I said, there are those clauses. Like I said, that in those leases specifically so that
I've consulted a lawyer.
And there's always those clauses, especially when it's two parties, that you've had, the opportunity to consult with an attorney so that you fully understand what you're signing.
It's what's like running a business, Shem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here, let's make a final plug for you. We'll finish it off by just saying, so for people, you're very well versed. I can attest to the fact that you're a good lawyer, you're on the ball, you're enjoyable to speak to, and I think anyone who's a business looking to get a lawyer, I think Anthony's a really good guy to hit up. So I'll plug the company, plug yourself. We'll finish it up.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Curtis. Thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, for my specialty is the small businesses, guys looking to grow, guys looking to make, guys and women, in business, looking to grow their industry. And I'm available. Give me a call. I'm always open to discussion, sitting down, having a lunch, and seeing how I could help people grow and protect their interests. And whether it's from mergers, acquisitions, to if there is a litigation, I have a team behind me that's there to help me and to help you. So from big to small businesses, feel free to give me a call. Anthony Gattuso.
Anthony Gattuso, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Curtis. Thanks for having me.
That was fun.
That was amazing. That was really fun.
Cool, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.